Billionaire offered me any amount to stop his baby from crying. But what I discovered changed everything. If you could make my son stop crying for 15 minutes, I'll pay you whatever you ask. That was the first sentence billionaire Daniel Harrison said to me as we stepped through the oversized oak doors of his Beverly Hills mansion. His voice sounded calm, but the dark circles beneath his eyes told a different story. The crying reached us before we reached the nursery. It wasn't normal crying. It was relentless. Sharp. Almost angry. The kind of sound that made every person in the hallway instinctively tense. I'd worked with babies for nearly 10 years, mostly in community shelters across Los Angeles where families struggled just to keep the lights on. I'd heard hunger cries, pain cries, lonely cries, and frightened cries. This one sounded off. A woman wearing an elegant white designer suit folded her arms as we approached. "I hope you're not expecting miracles," she said with a smile that somehow felt colder than the marble floor beneath us. 93 nannies have already failed. I smiled politely. "I don't believe in miracles." She raised an eyebrow. "I believe babies always have a reason." The nursery door opened. The sound doubled. Inside the custom-built room worth more than every apartment I'd ever rented combined, a little boy with soft blonde curls screamed at the ceiling from his expensive imported crib. The second I looked into his blue eyes, everything stopped. Not the crying. Time. Then, inside my head, a tiny irritated voice echoed. "Finally, someone who doesn't smell like a luxury perfume store." I froze. The baby's eyes locked onto mine. "Please tell me you're smarter than the last 93. My father keeps hiring people with resumes instead of common sense." I almost dropped my backpack. There it was again. The gift I'd hidden since childhood. Ever since I was 12 years old helping care for newborns at the East Los Angeles Family Shelter. I'd been able to hear babies. Not their cries. Their thoughts. Usually they were simple. Hungry. Cold. Sleepy. Need mom. Need dad. But this little boy sounded like an exhausted businessman trapped inside an 8-month-old body. I kept my expression perfectly calm. "When was his last bottle?" I asked. The woman in white blinked. "What?" "His bottle." Daniel answered instead. "About 40 minutes ago." "What formula?" He pointed toward a row of perfectly organized containers on a marble counter. I walked over. 3 different premium brands. Organic. Imported. Hypoallergenic. Luxury labels everywhere. Then I noticed something. The newest container had been opened recently. The older one sat pushed toward the back. I picked it up. Different ingredients. Different protein source. Different oils. I slowly turned toward Daniel. "Who changed his formula?" The woman answered before he could. "I did." She stepped forward confidently. "I'm Victoria Monroe." Her smile belonged on a magazine cover. I suggested upgrading Oliver to a European premium formula. The pediatric nutrition consultant said it was superior. Inside my head, Oliver groaned dramatically. "Superior?" "It tastes like melted cardboard mixed with sadness." I nearly laughed. Instead I asked quietly, "How long ago did you switch?" Daniel frowned. "About 3 weeks." I nodded. "That's when the crying started?" Silence. His expression changed. "Yes." Oliver sighed. Finally. Someone who noticed the timeline. I picked up the bottle and read every ingredient. Milk protein. Palm oil. Added supplements. Different thickening agents. Nothing dangerous. But babies weren't machines. Sometimes something perfectly healthy simply wasn't right for one child. Then another thought hit me. Strong. Sharp. Also, a perfume lady is trying to assassinate my nose. I looked toward Victoria. Even from 6 feet away I could smell her expensive perfume. Heavy jasmine. Vanilla. Amber. Way too much. I looked back at Daniel. Would you mind opening the windows? Victoria frowned. The air conditioning is running. I know. I smiled gently. I'd still like fresh air. Daniel nodded immediately. One of the housekeepers hurried to open every window in the nursery. Within seconds, fresh California ocean air drifted inside. Oliver's screaming paused. For exactly 2 seconds. Better. But not enough. Then I noticed the blanket. Cashmere. Designer embroidery. Beautiful. And completely saturated with perfume. Oliver practically yelled inside my mind. That blanket is a biological weapon. I carefully picked it up. Even my eyes started watering. I'd like to replace this. Victoria laughed softly. That's Italian cashmere. I don't doubt it. I said it outside the room. But babies don't care where blankets come from. They care how they smell. Mrs. Lopez, the elderly housekeeper, quietly handed me a plain cotton blanket. No perfume. No fabric softener. Just clean cotton. I wrapped Oliver gently. His tiny body immediately relaxed. Daniel noticed. So, you think that's all? Not all. I held Oliver upright against my shoulder. Slow circles across his back. Gentle humming. The same lullaby I'd used hundreds of times in the shelter. Oliver took one shaky breath. Then another. Inside my head his voice became noticeably calmer. Okay, that's better. Pause. She smells like sunshine, laundry detergent, and pancakes. Another pause. Acceptable human detected. His little fingers grabbed my shirt. The screaming stopped. Completely. Silence filled the nursery. 1 minute. 3. 5. Nobody moved. Even Victoria looked stunned. Daniel stared at his son as though he'd forgotten silence even existed. At exactly 15 minutes. Oliver yawned. Closed his eyes. And fell asleep. The room stayed frozen. Finally Daniel looked at his watch. Then back at me. I've spent nearly $2 million trying to solve this. I smiled softly. You didn't need another expert. You needed someone willing to listen. Inside my head, Oliver mumbled sleepily. Promote her immediately. Tiny pause. And maybe fire perfume lady. Daniel Harrison didn't speak for nearly a full minute. The silence inside the nursery felt unreal after weeks of constant screaming. Oliver remained asleep against my shoulder, his tiny fingers still curled around my shirt as if he had already decided I wasn't allowed to leave. Inside my head came one sleepy thought. Good, nobody is making business decisions with my stomach anymore. Mrs. Lopez quietly wiped tears from her eyes. I haven't seen him sleep like this in almost a month. Daniel slowly exhaled. I was beginning to think something was seriously wrong with him. There wasn't, I answered. There was something wrong around him. Victoria crossed her arms. So you're saying every pediatrician in Los Angeles missed perfume? I'm saying babies experience the world differently than adults. I carefully laid Oliver into the crib using the unscented cotton blanket. He couldn't tell anyone what hurt. So he cried. Daniel looked at the expensive formula containers lined up across the counter. You really believe changing back will solve everything? I believe we should stop changing 5 things at once. He frowned. What do you mean? I pointed toward the nursery. New formula. New blanket. New detergent. New room fragrance. New feeding schedule. I looked directly at him. If something starts working, don't keep experimenting. Victoria forced a smile. We were only trying to give him the very best. Oliver snored softly. Please stop giving me the very best. I'd settle for the thing that doesn't upset my stomach. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop myself from laughing. Daniel noticed. What? Nothing. He studied me carefully. No. You smiled. I shook my head. Just relieved. Mrs. Lopez suddenly spoke. Mr. Harrison. Daniel turned. I still have 2 unopened cans of Oliver's old formula. Everyone looked toward her. I couldn't bring myself to throw them away. Victoria's expression hardened for the first time. Why would you keep outdated formula? Mrs. Lopez lowered her eyes. Because he seemed happier before. Daniel stared at her. You never told me. I tried. Her voice became almost a whisper. But every specialist kept insisting the new formula was better. Daniel rubbed his forehead. We're switching back tonight. Victoria immediately objected. Daniel, that's emotional, not scientific. Emma. My name is Emma Carter. I'd never liked interrupting wealthy people while they argued. But babies couldn't wait for egos. It actually is scientific. Every eye turned toward me. Introduce one change at a time. If Oliver improves after switching back, we'll have an answer. If he doesn't, we keep looking. Daniel nodded once. Do it. Victoria's jaw tightened. An hour later I followed Mrs. Lopez downstairs into the enormous kitchen. Every surface gleamed. Every appliance looked brand new. Everything was perfect. Except nobody looked happy. Several housekeepers quietly watched me prepare Oliver's bottle. One finally asked, How did you know? I smiled. I didn't. I paid attention. Another maid looked confused. To what? The timeline. The blanket. The smell. The formula. The way he stiffened instead of curling. Mrs. Lopez nodded slowly. I've been saying that for weeks. No one listened. The older woman looked exhausted. In houses like this, she sighed. People trust expensive opinions more than familiar faces. Before I could answer, footsteps echoed behind us. Daniel. Still wearing the same navy suit he'd apparently been wearing since morning. When was the last time you ate? He asked. I blinked. What? You've been here 5 hours. I don't remember seeing you eat. I looked down. I was busy. He glanced toward Mrs. Lopez. Please make dinner. She smiled. I already started. Oliver's sleepy voice interrupted. Finally. Someone noticed she skipped lunch. Humans are slow. That evening, just after sunset, I fed Oliver his first bottle using the original formula. He drank almost every drop. No crying. No twisting. No fighting. Just peaceful little gulps. Halfway through the bottle his thoughts drifted lazily into my mind. This tastes familiar. Pause. I remember this one. Another sip. My stomach approves. When he finished, I rested him against my shoulder. One tiny burp. Then another. He smiled. Actually smiled. Mrs. Lopez gasped. Oh my goodness. Daniel looked stunned. He hasn't smiled during feeding in weeks. Oliver looked directly at him. Hello, Father. Nice to see you without panic on your face. Daniel smiled back without understanding why. It was the first genuine smile I'd seen from him all day. The next morning I arrived just before 7. The mansion felt different. Quiet. Peaceful. Mrs. Lopez met me at the entrance practically glowing. He slept 6 straight hours. I smiled. Really? She nodded enthusiastically. For the first time since his mother passed away. I stopped walking. His mother? Daniel's wife had died? Mrs. Lopez lowered her voice. Car accident. 8 months ago. The same week Oliver was born. Everything suddenly made more sense. Daniel hadn't just been raising a difficult baby. He'd been grieving while learning to become a father completely alone. Upstairs I found him sitting beside the crib. Still wearing yesterday's wedding ring. Still staring quietly at his sleeping son. He looked up as I entered. I don't know how to thank you. I shook my head. Don't thank me yet. We've had one good night. We need consistency. He nodded. I'd like to offer you a full-time position. Before I could answer, Oliver stretched inside the crib. Opened one eye. Then thought with absolute certainty. Accept the job. These people would accidentally buy me a gold-plated diaper if you left. I didn't answer Daniel immediately. Instead, I looked at Oliver. He blinked up at me with sleepy blue eyes, stretched both arms into the air, and let out a tiny yawn that somehow sounded victorious. Inside my head his voice returned, cheerful this time. Congratulations. We survived breakfast. That's a company record around here. I smiled before I could stop myself. Daniel noticed. You smile whenever you look at him. I guess babies are contagious. He looked down at his son. I haven't seen anyone smile in this house for months. There was something heartbreaking about the way he said it. Not dramatic. Just honest. The kind of honesty that only came from someone who was too exhausted to pretend anymore. I'll accept, I finally said. But I have conditions. Daniel actually looked surprised. Conditions? I won't follow schedules that don't make sense. I won't ignore Oliver just because someone with an expensive degree disagrees with basic observation. And if I think something is hurting him, I'll say so. Even if nobody likes hearing it. For a moment the room stayed quiet. Then Daniel extended his hand. Deal. Oliver sighed happily. Excellent. The adults are finally negotiating like functional humans. My room sat beside the nursery. It wasn't nearly as extravagant as the rest of the mansion. Simple furniture. A comfortable bed. A bookshelf. A small balcony overlooking the gardens. Honestly, it felt perfect. Mrs. Lopez helped me unpack. I've worked here 16 years, she said while hanging my jackets. I've never seen Mr. Harrison trust someone this quickly. I think he's desperate. She smiled sadly. I think he's lonely. The first week passed quietly. Each day Oliver became a little happier. His appetite returned. The endless crying disappeared. He started laughing whenever sunlight reflected across the nursery ceiling. Apparently that was fascinating. The glowing square returned. I approve of the glowing square. One afternoon Daniel walked in just as Oliver burst into laughter over absolutely nothing. Daniel froze. What happened? I looked toward the window. Clouds moved. He stared. Seriously? Oliver giggled again. Father. The ceiling is performing. Keep up. Daniel laughed. A real laugh. Not polite. Not forced. It lasted only a few seconds. But every employee in the hallway looked toward the nursery. Mrs. Lopez whispered. I forgot what that sounded like. Victoria, however, was becoming increasingly impatient. She continued visiting almost every afternoon. Always carrying expensive gifts. Imported toys. Luxury baby clothes. Designer blankets. Oliver hated nearly all of them. She entered carrying a giant stuffed giraffe wrapped in gold ribbon. Oliver looked at it. Then immediately thought. That giraffe has judgmental eyes. Victoria reached for him. Come here, sweetheart. Oliver's tiny hands instantly grabbed my shirt instead. His thoughts became dramatically louder. Emergency. Emergency. Perfume detected. I almost laughed. Victoria noticed. Something funny? No. Oliver just seems tired. He was smiling a second ago. Babies change moods quickly. She narrowed her eyes. Or maybe he's becoming attached. I hope you remember you're only his nanny. Before I could answer, Daniel walked into the room carrying his laptop. He knows exactly who she is. Victoria smiled. I wasn't criticizing. I was simply reminding everyone about professional boundaries. Daniel didn't even look up from the screen. Emma's job is taking care of Oliver. She's doing that better than anyone else has. Victoria's smile barely moved. But something cold flashed across her face. Oliver noticed too. Uh-oh. Perfume Lady activated her villain eyebrows. 2 weeks later Oliver attended his first charity luncheon. Daniel insisted it would only last an hour. The event took place at one of Los Angeles's most expensive hotels. Crystal chandeliers. Live orchestra. Television cameras. Business leaders. Celebrities. Everyone wanted to meet the Harrison heir. Oliver wanted absolutely none of it. He frowned the second we entered the ballroom. Too loud. Too shiny. Too many adults pretending to enjoy tiny sandwiches. I nearly burst out laughing. Daniel leaned closer. What? Nothing. He gave me an amused look. You've been saying nothing a lot lately. Everything went smoothly. Until another baby started screaming. Across the ballroom a young couple desperately tried calming their daughter. People nearby began whispering. Several guests moved farther away. The exhausted mother looked close to tears. Then I heard the baby's thoughts. Not clearly. Just enough. Head hurts. Bright. Everything hurts. My stomach dropped. That wasn't colic. I walked toward them. Excuse me. The parents looked embarrassed. I'm so sorry. She's been crying for hours. I crouched beside them. When did this start? This morning. Has she been unusually sleepy between crying? The father nodded. Yes. Almost impossible to wake. Every instinct inside me screamed. Please. I looked directly into the mother's eyes. Take her to the emergency room. Tonight. Both parents hesitated. Our doctor said it was probably gas. I hope your doctor is right. But if I'm wrong, you lose a few hours. If I'm right. I couldn't finish the sentence. Something in my expression convinced them. Within minutes they left the event. Daniel watched the entire exchange. You really think something's wrong? I do. He studied me carefully. You never panic. I don't. But that baby worried me. The next morning, every television station in California carried the same story. Local infant diagnosed with early meningitis after nanny urges parents to seek immediate help. Doctors confirmed the little girl had arrived just in time. A few more hours. And the outcome could have been very different. By noon my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters. Television producers. Parenting podcasts. Everyone wanted interviews. Oliver listened while I silenced another unknown number. Then announced proudly inside my head. Emma became famous. Tiny pause. I discovered her first. By the end of the week, my name was everywhere. Unknown California nanny helps save infant after doctors miss warning signs. The story spread across social media faster than I could keep up with it. Parents praised me. Medical professionals debated me. Television hosts invited me onto their programs. I declined every interview. I don't want attention, I told Daniel while deleting another voicemail. I just want to work. He leaned against the kitchen counter, coffee in hand. You've become impossible to ignore. Oliver looked between us while chewing happily on a silicone teething toy. Excellent. Now maybe strangers will stop asking if father knows how to hold a baby. Daniel looked over. What was that smile for? I was thinking. You do that a lot. I try. His tired face finally broke into another genuine smile. It suited him far better than exhaustion ever had. Unfortunately, someone else had been watching the headlines. Victoria Monroe. She arrived the following afternoon wearing another flawless designer outfit and carrying an expensive bouquet for the staff. She smiled warmly at everyone. Too warmly. I heard Emma is becoming quite the celebrity. Mrs. Lopez accepted the flowers politely. Miss Carter deserves it. Victoria's smile barely changed. I'm sure she does. Then she turned toward Daniel. May we speak privately? They stepped into the library. The door wasn't completely closed. I wasn't trying to listen. But voices naturally carried through the hallway. Daniel. I'm worried. About what? About Oliver becoming emotionally dependent on an employee. Daniel sounded confused. He's attached because she comforts him. That's what good caregivers do. Victoria sighed dramatically. You don't understand. People become ambitious once they taste attention. I've known plenty of stories. Nannies becoming much more. Daniel's answer came immediately. I trust Emma. Silence. Then Victoria asked quietly. You trust her more than me? Another silence. This one lasted longer. Finally. Yes. Inside my head Oliver cheered. Point for father. Finally answered a question correctly. The next morning an elegant black SUV stopped outside the mansion. A woman in her late 50s stepped out. Perfect posture. Silver hair. Sharp gray eyes. She carried herself like someone accustomed to making decisions. Mrs. Lopez whispered. Mrs. Evelyn Harrison. Daniel's mother. Oliver immediately looked toward the hallway. Grandma arrived. Pause. She gives excellent hugs. Tiny pause. And terrifying eye contact. Evelyn entered the nursery without wasting a second. So. She looked directly at me. You're the nanny everyone keeps talking about. I nodded politely. Emma Carter. She looked around the room. Daniel tells me you've accomplished what 93 professionals could not. I listened. She folded her arms. My son says the same thing. Her eyes shifted toward Oliver. Instead of crying, he smiled. Reached both hands toward her. She immediately picked him up. You look healthier. Oliver patted her cheek. Grandma smells like tea and books. Safe person. Evelyn laughed softly. I haven't heard him laugh in months. Neither had I. Not like this. She watched me carefully for several minutes before asking. Where did you study? I didn't. You have no degree? No. Just experience. 10 years. She nodded slowly. Interesting. Nothing more. No criticism. No praise. Just. Interesting. 3 days later, Daniel received an invitation to speak at the California Children's Health Foundation Gala in downtown Los Angeles. Nearly every influential family in the state would attend. Victoria immediately volunteered to accompany him. Naturally. She assumed she already belonged beside him. Daniel surprised everyone. I'd like Emma to come too. Victoria blinked. Why? Because Oliver will be there. And Emma is his caregiver. Victoria forced another perfect smile. Of course. But people may misunderstand. Daniel closed his laptop. I don't organize my life around gossip. Oliver clapped enthusiastically. Father unlocked confidence. Achievement earned. The gala was spectacular. Crystal lights. Classical music. Hundreds of guests. Television cameras followed Daniel everywhere. Oliver remained unusually calm in my arms. He watched the ballroom like a tiny detective. Too many shiny shoes. No babies. Suspicious meeting. Then, halfway through dinner, Oliver suddenly became tense. His tiny fingers wrapped tightly around my hand. I immediately recognized the feeling. Something was wrong. What is it? I whispered. His thoughts came rapidly. Bottle smells different. I looked toward the insulated baby bag. Everything seemed normal. Still. I opened the bottle. Something smelled. Off. Not spoiled. Different. Very slightly sweeter. I didn't let Oliver drink it. Instead, I quietly prepared another bottle using sealed formula from my emergency container. He drank happily. No problem. I slipped the original bottle into my bag without saying anything. Hours later, after returning home, I compared both formulas. One matched perfectly. The other contained a nutritional supplement that wasn't supposed to be there. Not dangerous, but unnecessary. Someone had added it after the bottle was prepared. Mrs. Lopez stared in disbelief. I made this myself. I know. You didn't add anything? Never. Daniel looked from the bottle to me. What are you thinking? I answered honestly. I'm thinking someone wanted Oliver uncomfortable again. The room became silent. Very silent. Oliver looked toward the nursery door. Then thought quietly. Perfume lady was near my bottle today. My heart sank. I couldn't tell Daniel what I'd heard. Not yet. Not without proof. But for the first time since arriving at the mansion. I realized this wasn't simply jealousy anymore. Someone was deliberately trying to make Oliver miserable. And I had a feeling the worst was still ahead. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about the bottle. It hadn't been poisoned. Whoever tampered with it had been smarter than that. Just enough of the supplement had been added to upset Oliver's stomach without putting him in serious danger. Enough to make everyone believe his progress had simply disappeared. Enough to make people question me. Daniel sat across from me in his home office. The bottle rested between us inside a sealed evidence bag. I had a laboratory test it overnight, he said. I looked up. The results? They confirmed exactly what you suspected. My stomach tightened. The supplement wasn't part of the original formula. So someone added it later. Mrs. Lopez quietly crossed herself. I knew I hadn't touched it. Daniel looked unusually calm. Too calm. When I built Harrison Technologies, he said quietly, people tried to sabotage my company. I learned something. What? They almost never attack you directly. They attack what you love. A heavy silence settled over the room. Oliver, happily stacking soft blocks on the carpet, suddenly looked toward Daniel. Father is thinking dangerous thoughts. Daniel immediately ordered security to review every camera inside the mansion. Every hallway. Every entrance. Every kitchen. Every pantry. Every delivery. Unfortunately, one camera had mysteriously stopped recording. The pantry camera. Exactly 34 minutes before Oliver's bottle had been prepared. Security looked embarrassed. It appears to be a technical malfunction. Daniel didn't even blink. I don't believe in coincidences. Neither did I. Later that afternoon, I found Mrs. Lopez crying quietly in the laundry room. They think I did it. No, they don't. They're being polite. I've worked here 17 years. I helped raise Daniel after his father died. She wiped away another tear. And now, my loyalty is being questioned. I gently squeezed her shoulder. We'll prove the truth. Oliver's tiny voice echoed inside my head from upstairs. Soup Lady is innocent. That's what he called Mrs. Lopez because she always smelled like homemade chicken soup. Soup Lady never lies. That evening, while putting fresh towels away in the nursery, I noticed something unusual. A tiny piece of ivory fabric caught on the edge of a cabinet. Silk. Very expensive silk. I carefully removed it. Mrs. Lopez looked confused. That doesn't belong here. Neither of us wore silk uniforms. Neither did security. Neither did the cleaning staff. But Victoria had attended the charity gala wearing an ivory designer dress. Exactly the same shade. I quietly slipped the fabric into an envelope. Not proof. Just another piece of the puzzle. 3 days later, Daniel's attorney arrived. His name was Ryan Brooks, one of California's most respected corporate lawyers. He spent nearly 4 hours reviewing security footage, phone records, visitor logs, laboratory reports. Finally, he looked at Daniel. I think someone inside your social circle is deliberately creating these incidents. Daniel nodded. I know. The question is why. Ryan answered almost immediately. Money. Influence. Marriage. He opened a folder. Victoria Monroe would inherit control of several Harrison family foundations if she married you. Daniel stared silently at the paperwork. I never paid attention to that. Ryan sighed. She did. Meanwhile, Victoria continued acting perfectly innocent. She visited almost every afternoon. Always smiling. Always asking about Oliver. Always pretending to care. But Oliver had completely stopped pretending. The second she entered the nursery, he frowned. Fake smile detected. She reached toward him. "Come to Aunt Victoria." Oliver immediately buried his face against my shoulder. Negative. Victoria laughed awkwardly. He really has become attached. Daniel looked up from his laptop. He chooses who makes him feel safe. Her smile almost disappeared. A week later, invitations arrived for the annual Harrison Children's Foundation Gala, the largest charity event hosted by Daniel's family. Nearly every business leader, politician, celebrity, and journalist in California would attend. Ryan closed the invitation. "This will be the perfect place." Daniel looked at him. "For what?" "To expose whoever has been manipulating your family." Ryan placed several folders onto the table. The laboratory report. The security failures. The financial records. The surveillance timeline. The fabric sample. And he smiled slightly. The bank transfer. Daniel frowned. "What bank transfer?" Ryan slid another document forward. "We traced the payment made to the company that serviced your security cameras. Someone had paid an employee to disable the pantry camera. The payment had come through 3 shell companies. But the money originally belonged to Victoria Monroe." The room became completely silent. Mrs. Lopez gasped. Daniel slowly leaned back in his chair. "I kept giving her the benefit of the doubt." Ryan nodded. "That's exactly what she counted on." That evening I rocked Oliver to sleep. The mansion was unusually quiet. Outside, the lights of Beverly Hills stretched across the hills like thousands of tiny stars. Oliver looked up at me. "Are we winning?" I smiled. "I think so." He yawned. "Good." Tiny pause. "Because villains are exhausting." I laughed quietly. Then he added one last sleepy thought before drifting off. "Father finally looks happy again. Don't let anyone break that." I gently kissed the top of his head. "I won't." Downstairs, Daniel and Ryan continued preparing everything for the charity gala. Because after weeks of lies, someone was finally about to tell the truth. The ballroom of the Harrison Children's Foundation Gala looked exactly the way California's wealthiest families wanted the world to see them. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors. A string quartet played softly near the stage. Television cameras waited for Daniel Harrison's annual speech. Nobody suspected that, before the night ended, one of Beverly Hills' most admired socialites would lose everything. Oliver stayed upstairs in a quiet suite with Mrs. Lopez while I stood beside Daniel and Ryan near the stage. Ryan adjusted his tie. "Everything is ready." Daniel looked at me. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I nodded. "If we don't, she'll keep hurting Oliver." Daniel didn't hesitate again. "Then let's finish it." Victoria stepped onto the stage first. She wore another elegant ivory gown and smiled confidently at the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began warmly, "our foundation exists to protect children." Her speech sounded perfect. Too perfect. When she finished, polite applause filled the ballroom. Then Daniel walked onto the stage. "Before tonight's donations begin," he said calmly, "there's something everyone deserves to know." The large screen behind him came to life. Security footage. Laboratory reports. Financial records. Bank transfers. One by one, Ryan presented every piece of evidence. The disabled security camera. The altered baby formula. The payment trail leading back to shell companies connected to Victoria. Finally, the laboratory confirmed that Oliver's bottle had been deliberately tampered with. Gasps spread across the ballroom. Victoria's smile disappeared. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You're framing me." Ryan calmly displayed another document. The camera technician has already confessed. He admitted he accepted payment to disable the pantry camera. Another image appeared. A photo of Victoria meeting the technician 2 days before the gala. Silence. Complete silence. Victoria looked toward Daniel. "You actually believe this?" "I wanted to believe you." His voice remained calm. "But every time Oliver got better, you found a way to make him sick again." She shook her head desperately. "I did it because I love you." "No," Daniel answered. "You did it because you wanted control." The room erupted into whispers. Board members stared in disbelief. Several journalists hurried toward the exits, already calling their editors. Security quietly approached Victoria. She looked around the ballroom. Nobody defended her. Not one person. She finally lowered her head as security escorted her out. Her career. Her reputation. Everything she had spent years building disappeared in a matter of minutes. A month later, life inside the Harrison mansion felt completely different. The tension was gone. Mrs. Lopez laughed again. The staff smiled more often. Daniel stopped sleeping in his office. Most importantly, Oliver was thriving. He crawled through the gardens every morning, chasing butterflies and laughing whenever the sprinklers turned on. Inside my head, his thoughts were no longer sarcastic every minute. Now they sounded like an ordinary happy toddler. Butterfly escaped again. I'll catch it tomorrow. One quiet evening, Daniel found me sitting on the patio while Oliver slept upstairs. "I've been thinking," he said. "That usually means something serious." He smiled. "It does. You came here because I offered you money." I nodded. "But you stayed because you cared." He looked toward the nursery window. "You didn't just save my son. You saved me." For a long moment neither of us spoke. Finally he asked softly, "Would you stay?" "Not as someone I hired, but as someone who belongs here." I felt tears forming before I could stop them. For most of my life, people needed me only during emergencies. No one had ever simply wanted me to stay. I reached for his hand. "I'd like that." The following spring, the Harrison Foundation announced a new program funding practical childcare education for women from low-income communities across California. Daniel insisted it carry my name. I only agreed if the graduates earned every opportunity through skill, compassion, and hard work. Hundreds applied. Dozens graduated. And every child they cared for benefited from one simple lesson. Listen first. Because babies always have a reason. Adults just don't always hear it. A year after I first walked into that mansion, Oliver celebrated his 2nd birthday. The entire family gathered in the garden. Mrs. Lopez baked the cake herself. Daniel lit the candles. Everyone waited for Oliver's next word. He looked at Daniel. "Dada." Then he turned toward me. "Emma." He wrapped one tiny hand around mine, and the other around Daniel's. Inside my head came one final thought. Best family ever. Also, Grandma still makes the best cookies. We all laughed. And for the first time since I had arrived in Beverly Hills, the Harrison mansion truly felt like a home. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Comment listen if you believe paying attention can change someone's life. And tell us, if you were Daniel, would you have trusted Emma from the very beginning?